Hawthorne Airport. Today, it's known as the runway next to the SpaceX factory that Elon likes to fly his jet in and out of. But it started its life in the late 1930s as the production facility for Jack Northrop's third go at starting a plane company. Northrop, yes, the Northrop that merged with Grumman to form the much-loved, probably not, just the massive military contractor that built the B-2 bomber, among other things. Let's dive into some of the history of Northrop, Jack Northrop's obsession with flying wings, and see what it's like on one of these semi-private jet services as we catch one of the few commercial flights that leaves from Hawthorne Airport. Hello, from Los Angeles. Today I'm flying to Phoenix, flying from Hawthorne, which is just there. But the cool thing about Hawthorne Airport is this. Can you see that? That right there is the SpaceX headquarters. They've got one of the Falcon 9 boosters just standing there. So I'm gonna go look at that quickly. It's a bit of an interesting airport. It's not really much like the JSX stuff that we did recently. This airport's pretty much entirely private jets, apart from Advanced Air, which is the airline that I'm flying. I realize that Elon is a bit polarizing, especially at this current moment. But if we can all just take off our polarized sunnies for a second and instead look at this through some cheap Kmart specs, how ridiculously cool is it that they can land these things? This particular one was the first one that SpaceX successfully landed in 2015. It only ever flew once.
It's standing up. It's standing up.
Instead of reusing it, SpaceX instead used it for static test firing until it was retired and put on display here in Hawthorne in August of 2016. All right, so the big rocket's kind of cool, but I wouldn't come out of your way to come and see it. If you're driving past or something, definitely worth a stop, but I wouldn't drive more than like 15 minutes to come see that. I guess it is just a big factory, isn't it? They are just making rockets there, which is cool, but you can't see it. It's not Boeing, they're not doing tours. At least I think you probably have to know someone to get a tour. But anyway, flights. Phoenix, you have to go in here. Thank you.
Do you have any luggage with you?
Yeah, I got 2 bags. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
There's no boarding pass or anything?
Yeah, no, you can just take a seat and
Okay.
the pilots will come and get you guys and board you guys on the plane.
Okay.
This cost.
I really went on in the intro about how this airport is special, eh? So let's get into that now. This airport was built specifically for Jack Northrop as he embarked on starting his third and final plane company, the Northrop Corporation. Who is Jack Northrop? Northrop started working in the aviation industry in 1916 when he was one of the first draftsmen at the Lockheed Aircraft Manufacturing Company. And no, this is not Lockheed yet. I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but the Lockheed brothers, Alan and Malcolm, originally started the Lockheed Aircraft Manufacturing Company in 1916 and produced a flying boat and a plywood biplane. This business did okay initially, but a surplus of ex-warplanes after World War I killed the market for new aircraft, and so in 1921, the Lockheed brothers liquidated the company.
Not a charity, it's a business, and it's a dying business.
In 1923, Jack Northrop, now with a bit of experience designing aircrafts, joined Douglas Aircraft Company and worked his way up to being a project engineer over a 4-year period. In 1927, the Lockheed brothers came knocking once again, this time with the spelling that we know today. After the original Lockheed Company was liquidated, Malcolm went on to invent the 4-wheel hydraulic braking system that is in pretty much every car today. During this process, he got fed up with people misspelling Lockheed as Loghead, and so he legally changed the spelling of his last name to Lockheed. Random, but according to Wikipedia, Lockheed is a common term for brake fluid today in France. Anyway, the Lockheed brothers, along with Jack Northrop, went on to found the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation in 1927. I guess we're going on a bit of a tangent here, and this one's not really relevant to our story, but the name Lockheed Martin, how did that come to be? The Martin comes from when they merged with Martin Marietta in 1995. But just like, what a name. Martin Marietta sounds like it should be a French fashion house, not the maker of the AGM 62 Walleye television guided glide bomb. Also, television guided, it's a bit of a strange terminology, but they're essentially remotely guided missiles with a TV signal streamed back to an operator who controls the missile's flight.
Oh, sorry, guys. This is the military-industrial complex.
Anyway, Northrop worked for the Lockheed brothers for a couple of years before he went out on his own to start the Avion Corporation in 1929. They produced planes for a few years before being bought out by the United Aircraft and Transport Corporation. This was a mega conglomerate that owned Boeing, the airlines that would become United Airlines, and the engine manufacturer Pratt & Whitney. There's a big old story here that involved an airmail scandal that led to the forced breakup of the conglomerate, and this is half the reason why aircraft manufacturers don't own airlines or make their own engines today. But that can all be for another video. Long story short, Northrop sold his first company to basically Boeing.
Sold it. Sold everything.
And he left shortly after as they wanted to move his division and him to Kansas.
Kansas City, Kansas City!
Fair enough. So after all of that, he went out again and started his second plane company, the Northrop Corporation, in 1932. This time with funding from Donald Douglas, the man behind Douglas Aircraft, which would later merge with McDonnell to create McDonnell Douglas, which would go on to then merge with Boeing. And well, let's just say that led to the current downfall of Boeing that we're seeing today. This second company went on to make planes like the Northrop Gamma and the Northrop Delta. However, Northrop and Douglas got into disagreements over control and design philosophies, and eventually Northrop left.
Goodbye.
And the company was absorbed into Douglas. So his third go-around.
Third time, it was okay.
His third go-around was to form the Northrop Corporation, version 3.0. He didn't change the name. In 1939. It would be all him this time. After meeting with the city officials of Hawthorne, California, he secured land to build his new factory, and of course, they needed an airstrip to launch their planes from. And hence we have the beginning of Hawthorne Airport. This airport and the neighboring Northrop facilities would go on to produce planes and plane parts until 2017. Interestingly, especially considering we just visited the Boeing factory, in 1966, the Northrop Corporation won the contract to produce fuselage panels for the Boeing 747, and they would continue to produce these here in Hawthorne until 2017.
I feel, I think. Everybody, get your hammer. Supposed to be bulletproof vest, right?
No seating. Board wherever you like. Alright. Rock. This is really nice.
And the whole window will actually detach and we'll exit out the window.
So, the flight. We're flying with Advanced Air today. They are a relatively small airline based out of Hawthorne that operate commuter and charter flights around the southwest corner of the US. We're flying on one of their Beechcraft King Air 350s today. These have 8 or 9 seats if you count the seat-belted lavatory. I found the interior to be really nice. There was only 5 passengers on this particular flight, so that definitely helped. If someone was sitting directly across from me, that may have been a different story though.
Dogs are people too, Haley.
Don't tell me to help myself to the snacks, because I will help myself to the snacks. I was a big fan of the windows. They were absolutely huge. They had this pretty cool twisty mechanism to dim them, and even though I was pretty much over the wing, I still had great views, in part to these windows being so big. Now wings. This plane has a normal set of wings, a fuselage, a tail. It's no flying wing, but I did mention earlier that Jack Northrop was obsessed with the idea of the flying wing, so I think it's time we get into that. Northrop first came up with the idea of the flying wing in the mid-1920s whilst working at Douglas Aircraft Company. This was just before he would go to work with the Lockheed brothers for a second time, and he envisioned the flying wing as the perfect aircraft.
It's perfect.
There's no wasted weight in the fuselage or tail, and every square centimeter of the skin would be working in some way towards producing lift. If we all remember, Northrop's first company was the Avion Corporation, founded in 1929. Their inaugural product was the Avion Experimental No. 1. It was a flying wing with no commercial prospects whatsoever. Now, I glossed over this earlier, but the expanded history of what happened with Avion, Avion, was this. Northrop set out to make his flying wings, but he also pioneered an all-new, all-metal stressed skin construction technique for producing wings. In very basic terms, imagine there are 3 ways to make a wing. You can have a very strong frame that provides all of the structure and then lay over a thin, non-structural skin to build out the wing. On the other end of the scale, you can build an exoskeleton wing where the actual skin is the structure and you have no internal frame. Or you can land somewhere in the middle where you still have some framing and the skin provides some structural support. This is right where Avion and Northrop landed. He pioneered this stressed skin technique in America in the early 1930s. William E. Boeing, the founder of Boeing, paid a visit to the Avion factory and saw this revolutionary wing design. Pretty much as soon as he saw this revolutionary wing design, he arranged for his big conglomerate to purchase the Avion Corporation ASAP. He didn't care for the flying wing prototypes, just wanted the new wing building tech for the Boeing company.
But what if I want wings? You don't need wings.
After all of the Boeing and Douglas fun, Northrop could finally return to his idea of the flying wing in 1940, when his third company, again the Northrop Corporation, V3 at this point, would produce the N1M. This was another experimental plane that suffered from engine problems and stability issues, but despite this, proved that Northrop's vision had promise. After these semi-successful test flights, Northrop won a government contract to develop the XB-35, a large propeller-driven bomber. This would later be developed into the YB-49, a modified design that used jet engines instead. Despite a fatal crash during its second test, the Air Force goes on to order an extra 30 RB-49s. These were planned to be used as reconnaissance aircrafts, hence the R, not the Y. The design was slightly different, but very similar. It was still a flying wing design. So in total, the Air Force had contracted Northrop to build 43 of these flying wings. And this is where we get into the conspiracy theory. Do we really want to talk about this?
Show me to me, please. Please send it to me.
Of course. It goes like this. The military places these orders. Less than a year later, in 1949, they cancel the RB program. So Northrop now only has to make the 13 YB-49s. In May of 1950, all flying wing contracts were cancelled abruptly without explanation by Stuart Symington, the Secretary of the Air Force. All airframes apart from one test RB-49 were ordered to be chopped up and smelted down in portable smelters that were brought to the Northrop facilities. Shortly after this, Northrop retired from his company after seeing his dreams of a flying wing destroyed. At the time, the reasoning for cancelling all of the contracts came down to the program being behind schedule and over budget. But in 1979, Jack Northrop stated in a news interview that the Air Force had cancelled the flying wing contracts due to Northrop refusing to merge with competitor Convair.
Without question, to merge with Consolidated Vultee. He said, alternatives, you'll be goddamn sorry if you don't.
Who really knows the truth here? And it's probably a mix of factors. Northrop's company was a technological trailblazer, but Northrop himself often collided with the wheeling and dealing that occurs in Washington. Sounds a bit familiar, eh? In 1976, with his health failing, Jack had one last go at getting the flying wing out there. He reached out to NASA, imploring them to explore the low-drag, high-lift concept. They replied, stating that the idea had technological merit and that its flying wing concept had not been completely abandoned. Wink, wink. In January of 1981, literally on his deathbed, executives at Northrop and the Air Force gave Jack special clearance to see the designs and hold a model of the B-2 stealth bomber. His dream of the flying wing wasn't dead after all. He reportedly said, "Now I know why God has kept me alive for 25 years. He passed away a month later and the B-2 would go on to have its first public flight in 1989. Wow! What a touching story. This is literally a stealth bomber, a war machine. Jack Northrop was definitely a genius airplane designer and contributed massively to a lot of the design of modern airplanes today. This heart-touching story about this old man on his deathbed, I don't know.
We want to thank our guests, the pro-war people.
All right, let's talk about flying wings and inherent instability, I guess. I've got some models here for us. We've got sort of a traditional plane design, fuselage, wings, tail, and then we've got like an example flying wing. I guess I just want to quickly talk about why this one's inherently stable and this design in its pure form isn't. Let's talk about how a traditional plane can move, I guess, right? So it can pitch up and down, like in this axis. It can roll, or it can yaw, like this, right? This design is basically inherently stable. If it gets knocked by a bit of wind, it'll return to stable flight. If we think about like normal plane design, when you've got a tail with a vertical and horizontal stabilizers, this acts much like the tail on a dart or the feathers on an arrow to stabilize both the pitch and the yaw in normal flight. With your flying wing design, you're missing that tail. So you don't have inherent stabilization coming from the horizontal and vertical stabilizers. Okay, an analogy suggested by ChatGPT was a fruit bowl. If we think of the orange sitting at the bottom of the bowl as stable flight, if your traditional plane is knocked around by the wind, it'll return to sort of level flight. But with a flying wing, things are a little bit different. Get this bottle of wine, think about it, trying to balance it on top of your hand. You think about that, it takes sort of constant input from me to keep that upright. Otherwise, once it starts falling, it'll continue falling. And this is pretty much what happens to a flying wing if it gets hit by a bit of wind or something like that. So there's your analogies brought to you by ChatGPT, and this video is brought to you by Wine Tracker Plus. Get alerts and notifications, emails for all the best Qantas wine deals so you can get points. Link down below. It's a website and a service that I made.
The impenetrable fortress of suburbia!
Follow GPS, I'm in a hurry.
Very smooth.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Very fast, yeah. Just like that. Is this like the walkway between the car park or something? I don't know. That was very quick. Very quick. I was pretty quickly off to check into my next flight to Texas after this. And that one was just a standard American Airlines economy flight. I don't think you'll see any of the Texas flights just because they were frankly boring. But anyway, overall, this advanced air flight, super quick, super easy. I'm continuing to be a big fan of these semi-private jet small plane experiences. I really didn't go into depth in it in this video at all. I made a video about the JSX experience. In that video, I go over how they can operate these sort of small flights, why they don't have security. I just talk about the legal framework and some of the history of it all. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Check out flightformula.com. Go check out Wine Tracker Plus. Go subscribe to that, please. And thank you. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.